I couldn't believe it when I got divorced. All those years of effort, building a family, going through the motions that everybody has to do, and then there I was, in the process of getting divorced, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I couldn't believe it, really. I thought I was going to be with my wife forever. But I guess she got bored of me, and there was nothing I could do about it, and there I was, a former shadow of myself, lost and alone now, with no idea what I could do for my future. I suppose it's good news that when we did get divorced, she didn't try to get more than half. I had a buddy of mine got divorced a few years before me, and somehow his wife ended up with 80% of everything. How that worked, I don't know, because she didn't work. So I got half of everything that I worked for, and in the end, I suppose it's not so bad. I mean, it is, but you have to be positive, I suppose. We had one kid together, my son. He meant the world to me, and he was 18 when we got divorced. So I am happy that he didn't have to see us fighting for years when we were together. That's the strange thing about it. As soon as he turned 18, my wife decided she wanted to divorce. There was no indication up until this point that anything was wrong. Perhaps I should have picked up on some of the little things she did, but I just didn't see them, if there were even anything that she did wrong. I thought we were okay together. Maybe not happy, not ecstatic to be in each other's company, but okay enough to know that it is the best for both of us to remain together. I suppose that's how I found myself going to the Philippines. I was broken and I needed to do something different. I was 58 when we got divorced. We had our son when we were both 40. Both me and my ex were the same age. So to get divorced at that age in America, there wasn't really much hope for a guy like me. So what was I going to do? That was something I asked myself often. What was I going to be able to do? I thought I was only a few years away from retirement, but now there was no end in sight. So again, this is why I start thinking about the Philippines. I'd never been to the Philippines, but I'd known a few guys who had. The thing that they always talked about was how much cheaper it was, and because of that, retirement could still be possible for me when I was 60. That's the age I always planned to retire, and because I started looking into the Philippines, that's when I realized that this could be my only choice. I continued working from 58 until I was 60, but I did enter a depression that I was struggling throughout that whole period. I started drinking heavily in the evenings to cope, and I was just going through the motions that I needed to go through every day until I could finally reach 60 and retire. I would like to mention that my story might be a little bit different to the other stories I've heard. I didn't do anything that I regret doing, apart from things I did to myself. I did very stupid things that I regret, things that I would never have done in America, and things that I never thought I would have done anyway. I want to give a bit of a warning to other guys that find themselves going through a tough time in their latter years. I allowed myself to spiral out of control, and that's what I want to say. If it could happen to me, I never thought something like that would happen to me. I never thought I would have allowed myself to get into such a state, but I did. So you have to be careful and make sure it doesn't happen to you. When I reached 60, I'd had enough. In hindsight, I probably should have retired when I was 58, because most of the money I earned during that time, I wasted going out for drinks and spending too much money to drown my sorrows. Just trying to feel better. It's a difficult situation to be in when you find yourself spiraling out of control, and while drink helps in the moment, it's not the best course of action, because in the long run, it makes things worse. As I've already said, I'd never been to the Philippines. I just held on to the hope that when I got there, I would like it. That's all I could hope for. But one day, I had had enough and just said to my son, who was just halfway through college, that I'm leaving, and I don't know if I'm ever coming back. He told me not to be so overly dramatic, but he said he'd come and visit me at some point, and just like that, I sold everything I had, which wasn't a lot because I didn't have a house anymore, and with that money, about $100,000, and a small regular income, around $1,000 a month, I flew to the Philippines to start what I hoped would be the journey to recovery, and the journey to really get back on top of my mental health, as well as my overall health, which had deteriorated over the past 2 years because of my erratic behaviour. Looking back, flying to the Philippines sight unseen may have been a very hasty decision, but as soon as I arrived in the country, I did feel like I had a new lease on life. It was nothing like I expected it to be, although I had seen videos, by this point more than a few. Watching somewhere on video is very different to actually being there. When you're watching a video, you only get to see it. When you're there, you can see it, hear it, smell it, and it's a very different experience. I was very nervous that I wouldn't like it, but I loved it. It wasn't like I expected it to be. It wasn't better or worse than my expectations, but it was just great to be there. I didn't really know where I wanted to be. Most of the things I watched were about Angeles City, as well as Manila, and some of the islands. When you arrive in the Philippines, usually that will be to Manila, especially if you're going from the States. So Manila was where I was going to spend my first few days, weeks, or even months. I had no idea. I just hoped I would pull myself out of the depression. In the first few days, that's definitely what happened. I just stayed around the BGC area, going in a few of the restaurants around there, going out for a few drinks, just acclimatizing to being in such a different place. The closest place I'd been before was to Mexico, and I can safely say that the Philippines was nothing like there. Makati was also somewhere that I'd read about, so I did venture there about a week after staying in BGC. But unfortunately, I got back into a downward spiral that would see me making some crazy decisions and doing some very strange things. I was still depressed about the situation from back home, and while I very nearly pulled myself out of the depression altogether, when I found myself in Makati for the first time and some of the bars there, I got dragged into a lifestyle that I never thought would even appeal to me. I started drinking again, not just casually, excessively, and I would wake up in strange places, wondering what I did the night before. When I was doing it, I was having a good time. At least I think I was. But when I woke up, all I wanted to do was be somewhere else. It was reaching for a bottle and making myself feel better that way that allowed me to feel better. I thought it would be best to leave Manila and try to calm down and try to get out of this spiral. I don't know why I was doing this to myself, but I was, and I couldn't help it. But I did decide to go to Bohol and relax in a resort there for a week and just try to get my head straight. After that week there, I was starting to feel better. I wasn't drinking every day, I wasn't taking myself to places that I shouldn't be going to, but I felt an emptiness at the same time. I think that was the biggest problem. When I was sober, I was empty and hollow, without any direction. I was unhappy as well. But when I wasn't, I was happy in the moment. But far worse when I wasn't in the moment. It was a very difficult situation, and I know so many guys who have been through similar things. I am in a better place today, which is good. But things took a turn for the worse when I decided to go to Angeles City and see what it was like there. I don't know if I should have gone. I knew, based on what had happened to me in Makati, that I could get carried away very quickly if I wasn't careful. And in Angeles City, the chances that I could make things worse for myself were higher. But that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking I'm starting to feel a bit better. I'm happy with my decision to go to the Philippines. The amount of money I've got is enough for me to live there, although it's only a basic life. But I did go to Angeles City, And that's when things got worse for me, before they got better. I took things slowly to start with. I found a small place to rent that was only $200 a month. It didn't even have air conditioning, but I wasn't bothered about something like that. I just wanted to find myself, get back to my old self of being happy and content. The first few days I was there, I didn't even go to the bars. I was just trying to have a few weeks without drinks, which would mean that when I did have the next drink, I wouldn't have the urge to continue indefinitely. I wanted to drink casually, 3 or 4 drinks in the evening, 5 at the most, so I thought a few weeks off would get me straight. Perhaps that's just me trying to reason things with myself. I'm not sure about that, but when I went into that first bar in Angeles City, I was hooked. And I mean, that was it for me from then. All I wanted to do was lose myself in the moment. That's the sad thing, because if you take that life path, it does give you enormous amounts of happiness when you're living in the moment. But the moment might only last for 6 hours at most. You go out in the evening around 8 p.m. and you've got 6 hours, and then it takes you 10 hours just to get in the right frame of mind again after you've woken up. So, you're coming into it in a very bad situation. If you're coming from your own country in a bad situation, think long and hard if you're going to be able to handle the temptations of places like the Philippines, especially Angeles City. I'm not even talking about the girls here. I'm just talking about going and having a drink. Maybe you will talk with the girls, but I'm thinking nothing like this. I was just interested in going and drinking. It was never my intention to meet a girl, and it definitely wasn't my intention to get serious with a girl, especially a girl that worked in a bar. That's not what I wanted to do. As I said, I was just happy to drink in the bars and have a good time. And that's what I was doing. I was hoping a good time would be different to this. But when I'd been in Angeles City for between 2 weeks and a month, I can't remember exactly how long, I did meet a girl in one of the bars, and we seemed to get along together, although I'm not sure why. I was 60, but I always thought I was a young 60, and she was 29, but she was mature for her age, and she lived not too far away from the bar where she worked. I don't even know how it happened, but all of a sudden she's living with me. I'm not giving her anything, but she is living with me, yet she is still working in the bar at the same time. I'm definitely not thinking straight to think that this is not the best situation to be in. I'm just going with it, living in the moment for what it was, hoping that I would find happiness. As I said, I was only spending $200 a month for rent, and it was a very basic place. But I had been to the place where she lived before, which was only $70 a month, and that was considerably worse. So perhaps that's why she moved in with me. I don't remember asking her to move in. I don't even remember bringing it up. She just brought her things there one day, and there we were. She'd go to work at the bar at 3 in the afternoon, and I'd go to the bar later in the evening when I felt like it, or if I had recovered or not from the night before. It was a very weird experience, drinking in the bar, not indicating that this girl is living with me, or is actually my girlfriend when I'm there, and she might be speaking to other people, and whatever you want to say, and things are just happening like this around me, and I went with it. I continued to go down this path. I'm not even paying attention to how much money I'm spending anymore. I'm just trying to make myself feel better. That's the sad thing, really. I am just trying to make myself feel better, and somehow I'm living in a very poor quality apartment. I've got a girl living with me, and she's still working at the place where I met her. I didn't think that we had serious things going together. She never indicated that she was interested in me, really, but I never indicated the same thing. So I don't get it, really. One evening, I didn't go to the bar where she worked. I went somewhere else. And when she came back later on, she was very angry because there was somebody else in the room. A shouting match happened between her and this girl, and when that girl leaves, she starts shouting at me. asking me why I'm doing this to her, talking about all these things, and I just don't understand what's going on. Then she starts talking about how I don't give her money and all the things like that, and what am I expected to stay? I don't know what's going on. I just told her I wouldn't do it again, and the situation continued. Some nights she wouldn't even come back. I would leave the bar, go back by myself, and maybe see her in the morning. In the mornings, I was at my worst, and this probably went on for 2 or 3 months, which was when I finally decided I needed to take a change before things took an even bigger turn for the worst. Perhaps it was because my son was coming to visit that I came to this understanding. Yet I still don't understand how I ended up with this girl. But I pushed myself through the pain and discomfort of not going to the bars for a week, and I finally started to feel a little bit better. She was still coming back and living with me, but it never felt like I was in love with her, and I don't think she was in love with me. It was just a relationship of convenience for her, and for me, I don't know what it was. But somehow, I did manage to pull myself out of it, and as much as I wanted to go for a drink, and some of the bars around there would have been available, I didn't. I spent about $8,000 more than I should have done, so part of me was thankful that I actually hadn't spent a lot more. But after that downward spiral, I did break up with her, and for some reason she was really upset. She said, what did she do wrong? But the thing was, I still didn't get it. I still didn't understand what had happened. It was a very strange situation that I was in with her, that some people might have loved and relished. But for me, it felt very unnatural. When I say I'm starting to feel better, I'm not feeling better. I'm just not getting drunk and my head is in a little bit better place. But I am still depressed. And I still think about my old life all the time and what I'd lost. And I was still thinking about what could I do to catapult myself into a better place in life. That was the hardest thing, not knowing what to do. But I knew that if I wasn't careful, I could find myself going down the same path again. It was around this time that my son came to visit. That's why I needed to pull myself together for when he arrived. That's why I stopped drinking, I guess, just to appear like my old self in front of my son. What would have happened if he didn't come to visit, I don't know. I suppose I just wanted him to feel okay when he saw me. When he came to visit, I met him in Manila, and I did my best acting to appear like moving to the Philippines was the best decision I made. My son liked it there as well, but he said 2 weeks was more than enough for him. My son was never a big drinker. He had an odd drink occasionally, but I wasn't having any alcohol at all when he was there. But on that last night, he said if I wanted to go and have a few beers. I knew I shouldn't have done, but the fact my son was going, and I wanted to have a good time with him before he went, I said okay. So we went for some drinks, and then that was it. I went into another spiral. We both got quite drunk that night and went back to the hotel where we had separate rooms. And when I saw my son go into his room, I went out again, having more drinks, back in some of the different bars in Manila, like the ones they had in Angeles City that I seemed to have become addicted to. The next morning was very difficult to pull myself together. I was going together with my son to the airport to wish him a safe flight home, and I think I managed to come across like I wasn't extremely hungover. I'd spent an extra 5 hours in the bars after he'd gone into his room, so I did have a very lot of drinks at that time. Taking him to the airport in the taxi, my head was pounding. I was just counting down the minutes until I could go and lie down for a bit. But I did manage to see my son off without him finding out that his dad was not in a very good state. I didn't even go back to the hotel. I just went straight to the bars, and that made me feel better. And a few days later, I found myself back in Angeles City, where I still rented that room. I went into all the same bars, but I did avoid the one where I met that girl that moved in. But I was walking past that bar one night, and she saw me. Then she started talking about how she missed me and how she wished things worked out between us, and she'd like to have another go to see if we could make it work this time. When I saw her, I hadn't had too many drinks yet, so I was clear-headed. But I told her why not? Come to my place later and we'll talk about it. I can remember saying that and thinking, why did I say that? I just didn't think she would bother showing up. So for that evening, I did the usual, back to the room, and then there's a knock on the door at 4 a.m, and she was there. I was quite shocked, but that's the problem. When I actually saw her, I'd probably had 4 or 5 drinks, so I wasn't drunk. But I was in the amazing happy phase that you have. So I was open to more things because it sounded like a good idea. But when you feel as bad as you do at 4 in the morning, then you have to sort of grit your teeth and get on with it. So that continued. Again, and a few months later, for some reason, completely unbeknownst to me, with everything still going on as it was before, and she's continuing to work, I'm just getting drunk every day, and this is the existence I find myself in again. Then she invited me to go down to Leyte, where she was from. I didn't even think she liked me, but I thought it would be good to get out of Angeles for a while, so I agreed to go with her. When we finally arrived, she even introduced me to her family as her boyfriend. They seemed to be very poor, and I felt bad for them. And she did have a son, but her ex had taken her son to go and live with him, which was very rare for the Philippines, she said. And she told me that she wanted to see him, but she didn't know when she'd ever have the chance. She took me around where she was from, and we're not drinking as much, and I'm coming around and starting to get to know her a bit better, and I'm starting to actually like her. But I still couldn't understand how things were happening like they were. It was good to get away, and because of that, not drink. And she didn't like to drink. She was always drunk, though, when we were in Angeles, but at home, she wasn't. I remember asking her about it, and she just said, I don't like drinking, but what can I do? I started feeling happy for the first time in a long time, and I started to feel like I didn't want to go back to Angeles City. That was the first time I seriously spoke to her. I told her, how about we move somewhere completely different together? And then she said she needed to work, she needs to make money, she needs to help her family. But I knew how much she earned, and it wasn't that much. I had $1,000 a month, which you could live on, and she knew I wasn't the sort to give money easily. That's the thing that I don't get. Why did she stay with me to start with? Because I really didn't give her any money. She had a place to stay, so she didn't need to pay for that, but I didn't give her any money, so why was she staying with me? I wasn't supporting her, like you hear many guys doing, so it was weird. But I did tell her what my situation was, and I told her that I've got an income and that's not much. I'm probably going to get more later at some point, but I don't know when. But then I asked, how would you feel if we just never went back to Angeles ever again? Of course, she had to say, well, what about all your things in the room and all my things? So I said, we'll go and pick up our stuff and leave. It was only because I had a week of clear-headedness that I started to actually like this girl, maybe even love her. And she knew that there was nothing she could get out of me, apart from, I suppose, the fact that she might not need to work anymore, which at her age, nearly 30, would have been a good thing for her. After that week, we did go to Angeles City, but I wasn't ready to get back into that life again. I was just starting to feel happy for some reason. That's the thing, I don't know why. Because to start with, I didn't even know how I ended up with this girl. She just kind of moved in. But I was starting to feel happy. Before going to Angeles, we moved from her family's house to a hotel and stayed for another week. I'm not touching drink, and she's not drinking either. And she's starting to change in a good way. And we kind of just thought, why don't we move here? We got enough money to live on. We're not going to have a fantastic existence, but it's enough. Why don't we do that? So we did. We returned to Angeles City, packed up all our things, and we would leave the following morning. We decided to walk hand in hand down Red Street without going in any of the bars, without doing anything, just to have one last look, in a way to say goodbye to this place that we hoped to both never see again. It brought us together, yet in a way I never expected. The temptation walking past all those bars was huge, but I feel like it was an important step to take, as if to say, I can resist the urge, and because I can, I'm going to. The next day we left Angeles City, and we've never been back. We built a small house close to where she was from. It was very small and basic, but it was all we needed. For everything, it was $35,000. We got married. I got a better visa to live in the country because of it, and for the past 6 years, that's where we've been. We got there just in time before COVID, which was a blessing in disguise. Without that, we'd have been stuck in Angeles City with nothing to do. But somehow, I'm still living there now. I haven't touched a drink since, neither has she, and we just get on with each other. I will admit to loving her now, and I feel like she loves me. But there's nothing she can get out of me, that's the thing. Okay, I built a house for $35,000. If that's all she has got out of me, then that's the equivalent of paying rent over the past 6 years. But the thing is, I don't think she has any intention of doing anything to me. I feel like she saw what state I was in when she saw me, and she didn't just want to live that life anymore. You could sort of tell, I think, but I wasn't picking up on it at the time, and she just moved in with me of her own accord, and I was in too much of a state to do anything about it. I am due to get Social Security soon, so that's going to make a difference. But the thing is, I don't spend much money at all. I'm at my happiest going for a walk on the beach in the morning, returning to an ice-cold glass of water, or if I'm feeling really like I'm in need of something more than that, I'll have a soda. Finding myself here was extremely unexpected. Getting married again, that was even more unexpected. I know I'm older than her considerably, but everything just fell into place, and for what it was, and for that, I have to say I've been lucky. Hearing all the stories of people who have lost everything, and having met people who lived close to where I live, who have been, built, and left, has made me to try to understand why I was lucky and they weren't. But I think the only way I can explain it is by saying that I wasn't trying to find somebody. I wasn't doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. I mean, I was drinking too much in the bars, but I wasn't going to that place with the intention of meeting someone or falling in love with them, or in a way rescuing them like some people say. If I went in with that mentality, I would have already lost, because the girl that I perhaps would have chosen wouldn't have been anything like the girl that I am actually with. The girl that I would have chosen wouldn't have been the same. She wouldn't have had the same need or desire to remove herself from that life. I'm not trying to say that my wife wasn't as attractive as most of the other girls that work there. That's not what I was trying to say. But I'm not thinking anything negative. I'm just trying to think what happened. And I think it was because I wasn't looking for someone, and I wasn't serious about the things that happened with her to start with, that she wasn't able to hold anything over me. She wasn't able to use my love for her to her advantage. So that's why I think maybe it worked out. Her doing anything negative towards me would have impacted her worse than me, in the early stages, because at the time I didn't even know why she moved in. So if you're a guy who's been through a hard time in his own country, maybe you've been divorced when you've already lived a life, and maybe you're looking to move to the Philippines, do it in a way where you hold the cards. I think that's what I would do, or what I would advise. What I mean by that is, if you fall in love with a girl, especially one that works in a bar, and you're showering her with money and gifts and untold love and affection, I believe like she's going to take advantage of that and not actually love you for you, but love you for what you give. Maybe love is the wrong word to use, but if you do that, she holds the keys to making you happy. She knows that, and she'll use that to her advantage. And that's why things end up going so badly for so many people, because they allowed their emotions to make them do things that they shouldn't do. Does that mean I have to be thankful for the fact that I was in such a bad situation before with my mental health and my drinking problem, and it was because of that I found myself in a better position now than most guys who try to retire in the Philippines? I can't really say, but I suppose that's how I like to reason it and reason away that part of my life. So I did go to the Philippines, sight unseen. I'd never been before, I'd never been to Asia before, and I quickly found myself spiraling out of control. But somehow, I found myself living a life that I never expected to have. It all came together, but it was basically due to luck, not management. Only looking back can I think why things happened like they were, and because of that, why I feel like I can give a little bit of advice to guys who are going to be doing the same thing. That's what I would say. So make sure that any girl that you get involved with doesn't have control over your happiness, because that's when things start to go wrong.